Hi, I'm Hannah Durden and you're listening to the Outdoors Group podcast. This podcast is a call to arms to get children and young people outside again. It's your one-stop shop for all things outdoor, child, young person and education related. Thanks for tuning in. We've been lucky to talk to some amazing people whilst recording episodes of this podcast, and in particular, recently we've spoken to some incredible adventurers and explorers. From Lewis Matthews, who ran across New Zealand and has an amazing new challenge in Iceland coming up, to Moose Mutlow over in Yosemite National Park working in swiftwater rescue, to one of the world's most respected explorers, ice warrior Jim McNeil. We love talking to these folk about the challenges they've undertaken, what makes them tick and what keeps them going in the face of adversity. And today we're talking to someone who's just at the beginning of their adventurer story. Lars Atkins, at just 24, has just completed a summit of the Matterhorn, one of Europe's most formidable mountains, in particularly challenging conditions and at a very impressive pace. This is not the first mountain he did, having summited Mont Blanc last year, and we suspect that it won't be the last. Lars has joined us to discuss what drew him to the mountains, the story behind this year's summit, the charities he is fundraising for, and what challenges he hopes to do in the future. Thanks for joining us, Lars.
Hello, how's it going?
Yeah, good, thanks. Let's start at the beginning by just asking, why did you decide to climb the Matterhorn this summer?
So, mountaineering in general, I've done quite a few different adventurous sports over the years, and it's only recently mountaineering's come in. So I'd probably say the last 2 years, if you're including UK mountains, I've done things such as the Lake District and Wales and stuff like that. Now, my alpine journey began last year when I attempted to do Mont Blanc in between shifts in my last job when it was in the middle of winter after a massive snowfall. Bit of a fail on that. I decided to go back in August, and I had a massive training thing for that where I do They did a bunch of like ice training in Switzerland on glaciers, which would involve like crevasse rescue, crevasse escape, ice climbing, general rock climbing and like lead climbing skills, stuff like that. Doing acclimatization on Gran Paradiso, which is the biggest mountain in Italy, and then I went and did Mont Blanc. A bit of a personal challenge of doing that top to bottom without the use of public transport or.
Do most people use public transport to get to a certain point?
So the way Mont Blanc work is that it's 4,809 metres or something roughly thereabouts. The town of Chamonix is 1,000 metres above sea level, meaning you've got 3,800 metres of mountain to climb. There is a cable car which takes you up the forest, and then there is a train which takes you from there to an area near a place called the Tête Roussé hut. So your first day is generally public transport and going to the Tête Roussé.
Okay.
The next day, so you'd sleep there, so you're a little bit more acclimatised. You'd then go from the Tête Roussé hut to the Gouta hut, and the next day would be the summit day, which you go from the Gouta hut to the summit. If you kind of think of it, a lot of people understand Everest has like Camp 1, Camp 2, and you kind of move through them. It's very similar with Mont Blanc. What I wanted to do is start from the absolute base, which is the town of Chamonix. So I started from the church in a place called Les Houches, if I'm pronouncing that right. I started at 1 a.m. I went through the forest, and you can see the cable cars, what people normally use above my head as I'm going up.
Yeah.
We reached the train track something like 2:30 in the morning, and we walked across where people had normally used the train.
Yeah.
I went to the Tête Roussé hut, dropped off my trainers, put on my B2 boots, went to the Gouta hut, dropped off my helmet, carried on past there.
Yeah.
So I managed to get what would normally be 3 or 4 days of work done, plus skipping half of it with public transport. Managed to get all of it done in 11 and a half hours.
Yeah.
Which was quite difficult for me, and obviously I may have been little bit salty of not having to do it before, so when I come back I didn't want to just do it, I wanted to do it in relatively what would be to me quite impressive fashion.
And it was quite challenging conditions when you went up there as well, wasn't it?
It was extremely. So obviously the effects of altitude, we'll probably speak about that a little bit more in the podcast, but it's heavily affected by how much you eat, how much you sleep, your rest, your mental, everything like that. What had happened with that one is that people would normally go between the huts and they'd get like 6-8 hours of sleep in between, so they're probably getting 3 nights sleeping the whole time to do it. I obviously had none, and not only that, but just from being nervous, I hadn't slept at all from the day before, which when altitude was hitting me quite hard. So I think when I got towards the summit, there was probably I started vomiting, which kind of is the signs of acute mountain sickness coming on, and there was like parts of blood in there as well, so it was a bit of a potentially turn back, but once you're at the 4,500 metre mark,
you're so close.
you're so close, so it's like, well listen, this is happening anyway.
Yeah.
The only thing which isn't maybe happening is the summit. So obviously I'd done all that, I've been quite happy, and obviously if anyone remembers the heat wave of 2022 when like Greece was on fire and stuff like that, it was causing massive issues where Mont Blanc is 80% glaciers. So like they were all melting and there was a huge amount of rockfall.
Yeah.
So it wasn't particularly avalanches that were the issues, but it was huge swarms of rocks that would potentially last over 24 hours. And the French government actually closed Mont Blanc for a bit, and there was this whole thing, and it still wasn't safe. But going up there in adverse conditions, doing it in the way it did, I was happy it did that.
And it laid the groundwork for this year.
It laid the groundwork for this year, yeah. So it made me learn a lot more about myself, about altitude, obviously the benefits of acclimatising. You've got a bit more of experience, so you kind of know what you're getting into. Because when it comes to alpine and Himalayan stuff, people might hear a height and they think, oh, well, I could do that. Or they'll do the whole, like, kind of simple maths where they think, well, it's this many times as big as Snowdon, so it's doing that. But it's a whole different kettle of fish. But obviously, give me a little bit of knowledge. But even after doing that, so there's something called the Alpine Big Three.
Yeah.
So in the Himalayas, there's probably Everest, and then there's a bunch of other amazing mountains, but not many people know any of the other ones. There's basically one famous one. Now, because the Alps is in the middle of Europe, and so many people go there from all over the world, there's so many different cultures surrounding it, and many interesting peaks. It's got more. It's probably got three, which is called the Alpine Big Three.
Yeah.
You've got Mont Blanc, which is the biggest in the Alps. You've got the Eiger, which is very famous for its north face. A lot of people trying to climb it and dying. A lot of books written about that in the 70s. And then you've got the Matterhorn, which is generally the most recognisable mountain in the world, which obviously beginning white and drew me to it. People say Everest is the most known mountain in the world, and it is, if I say the word. But if I show you three mountains to say which one's Everest, you probably couldn't tell me which one is.
No.
If I show people the Matterhorn, one, there's not another mountain like it. So it would be hard to get a close three. And two, a lot of people say, oh, it's that, or I've learned about that in geography. Or, you know, and even...
And I didn't realise it was the one on the Toblerone wrapper until you mentioned it.
Obviously, there's a bit of spicy stuff going on because Toblerone's now moved out of Switzerland. They've had to change the logo and it's not as good now.
Oh, okay.
But luckily, I bought some Toblerones from the airport and they've still got the Matterhorn on them, so I'm gonna hold on to them.
Hold on to them.
Obviously, Matterhorn, most recognisable mountain in the world. And even after doing all that stuff I did on Mont Blanc and doing, you know, any little bits I've done, people were saying, oh no, the Matterhorn is still a little bit out your skill set. And once you've done something so high and in the way I've done it, I think I was a little bit thinking, is it that hard? I mean, is it far away? Can I do it? Am I underestimating something? Maybe it's something, I should climb for 5 more years before I try this thing. But because people have potentially said, I don't know if you can do that one, or you've not particularly proven yourself elsewhere, it's really kind of catching my eye. Obviously, the weather window for all alpine mountains is basically the summer. I think the Alps has got a general weather window for mountaineering of 3 months, then outside of that is skiing. And just because of how fast my brain bounces around and how much I cycle through ideas of bloody swimming the channel, doing an Ironman, doing a run, whatever, this has just pinged in my head in June.
You thought, right, I'm going to do it.
Yeah, people normally give themselves maybe 6 months to a year to train for something like that, but the idea had hit in June. The weather window was halfway through August, and just I did
less than 3 months to prepare.
So basically, it was I think it ended up being 7 weeks in the end. From me and my mate sitting at a fish and wine restaurant, probably having too much to drink and thinking, well, that'd be a fun idea, and then kind of a week later going, oh my god, I'm training 4 hours a day for something I've picked on a bit of a whim. So it's a massive iconic mountain. I wasn't sure if I could do it. It looks absolutely beautiful. I mean, it looks great online, but having actually been to Switzerland, there are some places in the world that don't live up to the reputation or how good they look. Now it's awe-inspiring to look at, and there's an amazing view from the town of Zermatt, and there's sunrises where basically it's the first thing the sun hits in the morning, because Zermatt's in a valley. So you're basically in a dark valley with a bunch of dark buildings, a dark sky, and a glowing golden triangle at the end, and it's absolutely insane to look
amazing.
At. Obvious choice in the end.
Yeah, obvious choice. So you've talked a bit about your background with last year with Mont Blanc, but what other things have you done that have kind of laid the groundwork for being able to take this on?
So I think it depends how far I really want to go back with that. I mean, I was really into the whole MMA and cage fighting thing when I was like 14, but I think that got me quite good at preparing for an event, having quite a bit of stress behind it, having a risk assessment to do with it, and being able to say, listen, this will be really good if you do it, but there is a little bit of, you know, things can go wrong, obviously on a much smaller scale and stuff like that, but that's generally set the groundwork for how I approach everything else going on. I think of things as opponents and stuff like that, and if I beat one thing, it's just going straight for the other. Obviously I've went through phases of doing CrossFit. I've done like an ultra marathon on Brecon Beacons. That was one of the Spartan ones. That was quite good. Doing the Matterhorn, I mean, it'd probably be a lot of the alpine stuff I mentioned before. I mean charity work in general, because this whole thing was for Macmillan Cancer Support and for the Iron RMC charity.
You're going to have to just tell everyone what RNRMC stands for.
That is the Royal Navy and Royal Marines charity. So essentially they're basically a big umbrella charity. So they don't necessarily deal with one issue themselves, but they have a bunch of charities underneath them that will deal with different parts of the military. Some when people leave, things with homelessness, mental health, people who are still serving, families of those. So it's a massive all-encompassing thing that will deal with all things military, more so the naval side, but they do generally go outside.
Yeah. And then obviously everyone knows what
Macmillan Cancer Support do, and I've only learnt more about them as I've done this, and it has been great. But laying the groundwork for charity stuff, I did a thing for cancer research last year where I had to do 100 press-ups a day, every day for a month. And I had to pick a different place to do it. Okay. So I was doing it on top of a motorbike, I was doing it with a guitar amp on my back, I was doing it in a tree, and there was one of them where I had to free dive to the bottom of a lake, which was obviously difficult to do and not breathe and get a willing...
You didn't do 101 go under the lake, right? Did you have to come up and breathe, or did you do it? Yeah.
Oh yeah, I did. And obviously, I'll be honest, the logistics of it is probably more for like a video, because you're essentially doing a pull-up downwards. I mean, things get weird when you start doing them
underwater.
Deep in water, But I mean, that charity thing, I did the ultramarathon I mentioned, I did that for a charity called Daisy Garland, which do they help medication resistant epilepsy, which is a friend Neil, his kids deal with that unfortunately, and I've seen a lot of what he has to go through, so I did it for that as well. So I've had 2 charity things under my belt. I've had quite a few mountains, and then they all seem to have just mashed together this summer.
So 7 weeks, what did your training during that 7 weeks look like? It was a mixture of different things, wasn't it?
So
and what challenges came up during that 7 weeks?
I mean, I wasn't starting from a great place myself. I just I had this thing called cryptosporidium, which is basically an illness which is like food poisoning, but it lasts for weeks and weeks and weeks. That was from just doing wild swimming in Dartmoor and stuff. I just picked it up at the wrong time, so I hadn't really hit the gym and trained. I'd lost a bunch of weight. It wasn't great. And then I've had a friend, my mate Harry, who I've done this with, and he's helped out with doing a lot of the fundraising, and he's trained with me for this. He'd not done any mountains before, but he was really willing. He was very up for it. So I was essentially, the challenges going into it was teaching him a lot about how to do it, trying to get across some of the things. Because I said I could approach this with a knowledge of how altitude affects me, how big mountains do this. There's scary things like people falling in crevasses and avalanches and stuff, which once you see it, you can actually truly say yes or no to whether or not you want to be near that sort of thing.
Yeah.
It was me just trying to describe to him what all these things are like, and he comes from quite an alright background where, he's kind of grew up on a farm, he's done general stuff like that, hits the gym occasionally, but he's not done anything like it, but he was up for the challenge. So teaching him what to do. I've got a lot of revision around exams to do, stuff like that with my work. I mean, the training, it was probably about 4 hours a day, 5 days a week, where we do an hour of weights, and we had a guy called Ben who would come with us, who he really enjoys weightlifting. He's a very macho dude. He's often the one not letting you re-rack a weight because he thinks you've got 3 left in you, even though you're pretty sure you're not. So he was great to have pushers. We'd do runs, we'd do weighted runs and things like that. That might account for 90 minutes more, and then we'd basically go climbing for the rest of it. Yeah. So we'd have to make sure we were strong enough, fit enough. We could climb, and we would often do a lot of these things and rotate what is the last thing we do, because we need to be able to get good at performing well when you've already been doing something for 3 hours. And did anyone guide your training? Did you have any help with it, or were you guys just making it up as you went along? So there is a company, and they did sponsor this, called Elite Outdoor Fitness.
Where are they based?
They're based, it's more online personal training. What they do is they'll essentially have these things called fitness days where you all go out, and what it is, it's a guy called Nick Grange. He served in the SAS for 5 years before going into private security for 11. I think he's kind of come out of all that, escort bodyguarding type stuff, and he's went into more personal training. And he's currently got the world record for running a marathon with 80 pounds on his back and running a half marathon with 100 pounds on his back. So with his pretty hardcore, with his military background and that, he kind of knows what he's doing. And what me and Harry needed to do is get from point A to B with probably a bunch of stuff weighing us down. So he's helped out a lot with the training. I've worked with him a lot, maybe 6 or 8 months prior to this. He generally does big runs with around Brecon Beacons and stuff like that, where people chuck 25 kilo bags of sand on the back and run. A lot of his techniques, which are helping you to do with injury prevention, how to manage your training, taper off. He's helped a lot with that. So we do the 4 hours a day training, which would be weights, running, whatever, and then we drive down to Dartmoor, and every Friday we'd get 20 kilos of sand, put it in a back, and we'd essentially just either lap hills until we got the same elevation as the Matterhorn, or we'd go out with some other mates. I think we had some like Royal Navy divers with us. That was all right. I think one of them was like a 15-miler that we did. It essentially just march as quick as you can, just getting your back and your legs just strong. Yeah. And then if it feels a little bit hard, just remembering it's going to be a lot worse when it's up and it's minus 20 and you can't breathe.
And it's slippy underfoot.
So it was quite fatiguing. Obviously, there's a lot of sponsors and charity work to be done around this as well. So you've got the 4 hours of that. I think I forgot to mention we were chucking in like 5:30 in the morning CrossFit sessions for quite a period in this too. So a lot of it that was quite tiring. It was quite long, but ultimately it was very good. And then especially Harry, who hadn't done a lot of weighted running before, I could see him progress so much. Where initially he was going uphill with 20 kilos on his back like anyone would, absolutely hating life, sweating, fainted a few times. That was quite funny. He's all right though. But it came to a point where he was then going, he was just completely marching up, he wasn't having breaks, and then he changed from doing that to running. So you get little things called baby's heads, which are like big bushes in the ground, and it's absolutely ankle breaker city.
That's a polite word for what they're called.
And he was able to run across them with weight on. So he'd absolutely changed the stability he had in his legs, the speed he could move, and it got to a point where he was running. It didn't even look like he had any weight on him. So that was, you could see the progression every week. So it was very hard. Fueled mostly by chocolate milkshake. We had no reason to like lose weight or look good, so basically that became a bit of a routine.
So once you've done all this training, you go to Zermatt in Switzerland. So what happens when you get there? Because you're not going straight on the Matterhorn. What's the acclimatization like? Like, how does that go?
So the way it works is that there's a lot of changes what happen in your body when you're acclimatizing. Now there's nothing in the UK, none of our mountains are big enough to have much of an atmospheric difference between the bottom and top. And what happens as you move away from the earth going up is that the pressure reduces and all the air particles are further away from each other. And it just means that every breath you take, you're not getting as much oxygen in. There's a lot of changes your body has to do. I think the alveoli in your lungs will get thinner, you end up carrying more blood and your blood gets thicker, and it prevents you from getting altitude sickness, which can be anything from having mild headaches to feeling a little bit ill to vomiting blood. You can have cerebral edema where you get fluid on the brain. You get pulmonary edema where you basically get a bit of a gargling sound whenever you breathe, and that's just fluid
on your lungs.
Fluid on your lungs, so what it is, generally, gradually you climb high and you sleep low.
Okay.
So we spent, I think it was 4 days where we did a little thing where we went to the bottom of the Matterhorn to a place called Hornley Hut. If you want to think of that as like Everest Base Camp for comparison.
Say the name of the hut again.
Hornley Hut.
Hornley
Hut.
Hornley.
Hornli. Okay. Yeah, so we went to there for the first day. That was all right. Obviously, breathing it does kick you quite hard the first time you go up, because you're used to being so fit for weeks, and then you go up and then you feel like a 90-year-old walking uphill. It's terrible. After that, we did some more training on ice. We did a little bit further climbing where we took cable cars up to different areas covering Zermatt. We ended up doing Pollux, which was a 4,092 metre mountain.
Okay, so that's pretty massive.
That was pretty big. I mean, it's one of the biggest mountains in Zermatt, and obviously there aren't that many mountains above 4,000 metres in the Alps, so it's obviously one of few. That was to kind of get everything together that we'd done, because we'd learnt a bunch of basic rock climbing skills. We'd obviously done some crampon and ice stuff. As you get to the top of the Matterhorn, often that's frozen, and some of it can be a little bit of vertical climbing, depends where you go, depends on the weather. A lot of ropes and chain stuff, because there is some fixed lines going near the top of the Matterhorn, so a lot of it was trying to get us on terrain that would be similar for what we do. One, so the guy who's helping us acclimatise could assess whether or not we could do it, because me and Harry are...
Actually, I'm going to interrupt to say the guy... This guy, he's a guide that you've paid to, who knows the area, and he's guiding the whole trip for you guys.
What it is, there's a company called Frost Guiding, which they do guiding themselves, and what it is, they'll also they'll get other guides in, and they basically do the whole organisation of trips, and they'll either be teaching people who have never been in the Alps and putting them on courses they think would be appropriate, or if someone wants to do a big challenge like the Eiger, then they'll facilitate that, and then they'll generally know what's best. They really know the area, so if you're going to train for a specific mountain, they know the best places to go. They can predict the weather the best, because alpine weather is nothing like the weather here. It's completely different.
And you had the same guide that you had last year?
I did for the actual Matterhorn.
Okay, not for this stage.
For the acclimatisation phase. Now, I think A lot of people, the Matterhorn's very risky, and if you are capable of doing it, it's high in demand for people wanting to give it a bash, and there's not a lot of room for error. So I think a lot of guides can kind of shy away from it a bit. And if you do have a guide who is Superman, who has done it, then he'll be high in demand, and he's done it quite a few times and probably just gets bored.
Yeah.
So this guy wanted to do the acclimatization. I think he tried to climb the Matterhorn 10 times and he succeeded 5.
Okay.
And he's a mountain guide and he's someone who lives there.
Yeah.
So that's to give like a little bit of perspective.
Context, yeah.
Bit of context to like how easy of a challenge it is or not. And he was doing the acclimatization, so he could give us stories about when he's failed doing the Matterhorn, of when he's actually done it, and he could give us a really good representation. Say if we were climbing something, I think there was something we climbed called the Rifflehorn.
Okay.
That was a lot of vertical rock climbing and kind of lead trad stuff. And we were saying like, well, how hard's this? And he'd be able to like reference to sections that would be similar and say, well, yeah, there'll be parts which are this steep, but it won't be the majority of it, or you'll say a lot of it's like this. So he was good to have. And then the guide who I had on the actual Matterhorn itself, he was very good. He's who I had from Mont Blanc. So I said with the heat wave of 2022, not a lot of people wanted to do it. Not a lot of people wanted to do it in one go and change it from like the 3 or 4 day trip it normally is. But this guy, he's very optimistic climbing guide, and I think he's even said he's climbed for 36 hours in a row at one point because he was trapped in a storm.
Okay.
So I know that if anything goes to pot, one, he's going to be optimistic, he can risk assess, and he's got it in him.
Yeah.
Because just because someone's a guide and is experienced doesn't mean they want to push through anything hard. A lot of people have got that behind him, but I'm in a time of pushing myself at my comfort zone at the minute, and so he was good. So yeah, Dave is the guy who I had on Mont Blanc and the Matterhorn, and this guy who was guiding us initially was a guy called Andy.
Yeah.
So we ended up kind of summarising our acclimatisation process. We climbed the mountain Pollux, which was the big one that had the chains on it, that had a bit of rock climbing, a bit of ice climbing.
Does that have the crevices as well? Is that somewhere else?
The crevasses, yeah. So Pollux itself, it's generally rare you'll get a crevasse, which for anyone who doesn't know is basically a massive crack in the ice, and they can and often are like hundreds of metres deep. Fresh snowfall often falls down and it will cover over the crevasse. Essentially, it's like an alpine booby trap, which is just made by nature. We had to walk to Pollux, which we covered, I have no idea how much it is. It's probably about like 3 or 4 miles just going over a crevasse field, which had fresh snowfall in it. Because it was a hot day, all the snow was going to melt. So if luckily the snow was thick enough that you could walk across the crevasses, we had to get back quite quickly because that was now melting. Yeah. It would cause issues. So we had to go quite a lot to get to the mountain. Not many on it. But on our way back, obviously when you're moving across crevasses, you generally rope together and you keep the tension a lot. So if one person falls in, everyone else braces and drops to the ground. Yeah. And that did actually happen to our guide on the way back, where he was leading us and he stuck his little ice axe on the ground, just the tip of the end of it. Yeah. He stuck it in the ground to test the snow. And it was like he was eaten by a big Star Wars monster. It just absolutely, like, snow went up in the air and he went down, and me and Harry went, oh. We dropped and kind of braced ourselves. There was a bit of a moment in silence. I'm trying to remember the mountain rescue number. And then he just says, I'm all right, can you pull me out?
And then to pull him out.
Yeah, so, I mean, that was quite... I mean, it was quite funny in the end. Obviously, that can happen, and you don't want to kind of fall through something and land on an icicle, because that can happen too. It was a bit of a shock for Harry, because, a lot of people say, oh, don't look left and right before you cross the road, or this will happen, and it never does, so people get a bit lax as they grow up. Yeah. But I said to Harry, listen, we might fall into a crevasse here, and these things are very, very deep. Yeah. And then he saw it happen. And then he was like, oh, wow, can that happen at any step I take? And I went, pretty much, yeah.
So that panicked him a little bit?
It did a little bit. I just found it was entertaining at this bit. I think I put so much effort into the project, I just didn't care. No. It was just like, it was quite funny now. So that was that done. That was our 4 days of training. And
so then you're approaching your weather window at that point. And as you guys were approaching yours, the forecast wasn't looking good, was it? For climbing?
No, actually, so the Matterhorn summit day was meant to be on the Thursday or the Wednesday. Yeah. Now, we'd met Andy on the Monday, which was our initial acclimatisation guide. And he said straight off the bat, the Matterhorn is probably not happening this week. Don't worry about it, though. And then he was trying to... I mean, I didn't really ask him to say anything, but then he started kind of telling us about stories in the Himalayas where he tried to do mountains and weather would come in, essentially trying to relax us and get us a little bit less goal-orientated.
Yeah.
There's a term...
Trying to mitigate the disappointment if you weren't going to get up there.
Exactly. Not my style, but I can see why he's doing it.
Yeah.
There is a thing in mountaineering called summit fever, which has got a couple of things beneath it, and it's more to do with a fixation or a tunnel vision. It's not an actual illness, and it's essentially getting so focused on one summit that you either burn yourself out trying to get to it and you don't have the energy to get back down, or you spend so much energy trying to do one thing that you end up missing all the opportunities of what a change of plan could bring.
Yeah.
And he was trying to kind of negate us having summit fever or kind of stop it.
Yeah.
So obviously that...
Do you think that's partly why you took you up Pollux, because that was a big one, so it was like even if you didn't get the Matterhorn, you could have come away and said you'd done Pollux.
Yeah, it was, definitely. I mean, what me and Harry had done is that we had a wreath and a flag that we wanted to bring up for charity, and what we said we'd do is that everything we'd climb, we'd get a summit photo, so if something wasn't doable afterwards, we'd have something to come back and bring.
So the wreath was for which charity?
That was a charity called We Remember Submariners. They're essentially a bunch of ex-Royal Navy submariners who have come out, and they support the families, they support people who have left, they support obviously deceased and things like that. But I really like the charity after speaking to them. They do support a lot of people, ones who are not in Britain. I think there was an Argentinian submarine that went down.
Okay.
A lot of people had passed away, and then WRS, We Remember Submariners, contributed a lot of money to the families of them.
Yeah.
So obviously they're in South America, they're very far away from here, but they, in their eyes, everyone who's a submariner in any way, shape or form is part of a family.
Yeah.
And there's even a woman who's a tattooist, and what she would specialise in is that, say if a woman had had breast cancer or some kind of surgery that made them not feel as good about themselves, she would actually tattoo marks on the body, either to cover things up or to kind of put in feminine features that they might be missing. And what they did is they actually gave her some money, and she was saying, well, this isn't necessarily for the military or anything, but they're saying, we don't care, we just wanted to give money to it. So if they say any cause that is good, or they see any cause that is good and that they want to support, they will. It doesn't have to be military.
Yeah.
So you
took their wreath up.
We were taking the wreath up for them, and they'd actually sponsored and contributed some money to the climb, which we're very grateful for. So we were taking the wreath up, and we had a flag with our other sponsors and the charities on. So we'd been doing that prior. So obviously, like, backtrack a bit.
Oh yeah, so wear the window. Yes, so. He said it's not going to be doable this week. Yeah,
so Andy said it's probably not doable this week. He said maybe. I rang up a member from Frost Guiding, the guiding company, and he said, well, we're not changing our mind as it stands.
Yeah.
Thursday looks good, Wednesday doesn't.
Yeah.
So that's one of our 2 summit days. As we approach it, so we're not going to climb Wednesday because Thursday's looking good.
Yeah.
We get up there, and the first thing Dave, my guide, who's one of the most optimistic guides I've ever seen and toughest, says there's a good chance the Matterhorn's not happening.
Yeah.
And that made my heart sink a bit, because I know there's a lot of people who are too safety cautious, who give up too easily. He is not one of them.
Yeah.
So if he's saying there's an issue, then I know for a fact there's an issue.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we were looking at the weather, and it just lightning bolts everywhere. Like, you're looking through like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday, and then you're looking at the hours of the day as well. It's still lightning bolts now. Thing is, I'm not adverse to going through anything in a storm. I've done that a lot. To be honest, I find that quite fun in the UK, where I feel like the difficulty level's a lot less.
Yeah.
It's not an option for something like the Matterhorn, because a lot of it is sheer drops, and you're essentially climbing across the edge of like a big pyramid.
Yeah.
So if the rock gets wet, it's not like where ice can develop an issue that you can simply fix by chucking on crampons. If the rock gets wet and you slip off, it's a kilometre drop either side.
Yeah.
And there's not really much room for error.
And they're not going to send helicopters up because the weather's too bad.
Well, no, that's the other thing too. So if there was a storm and someone said, well, I'm going to go in it anyway, which even in my optimistic mind, the Matterhorn, it's not the best idea.
Yeah.
Mountain rescue in the Alps is 100% helicopter based, and they don't operate in storms. And there's a place called, I think it's called the Savoy or the Savoy, I forget, but there's a hut 2/3 of the way up the mountain. It's essentially like a little shed, and it's a rescue thing. And we were told stories by multiple people of someone who'd climbed the Matterhorn, a storm and rolled in, and they've had to go in this hut with no food or water and stay there for 3 or 4 days till the storm ends.
Yeah.
It's too dangerous to climb down. There's no real way of sustaining yourself, and mountain rescue can't do it.
Yeah, so you're just stuck there.
So that's the thing. Apparently as well, people getting struck by lightning in the Alps is it's a lot more common. I mean, it's a bit of a phrase here to say something that won't happen, getting struck by lightning, but it's very common and doable.
Yeah.
So that's a bit of a thing too. So they were saying rain you can maybe manage if you're on the way down and you're not far from the end. Lightning, complete no-go.
Yeah. So he said, no, it's not happening, boys.
So he said there's a good chance it's not happening. We'll see what it looks like tomorrow. I checked the weather app and it was completely not on at all.
Yeah.
Now, we had the summit day of Wednesday or Thursday.
Yeah.
And we've just used up Wednesday getting there because we had faith in the Thursday. Now it's gone because the weather's changed. I wasn't really going to take that for an answer, so I kind of went to my bedroom and I was thinking all different things I can do. There's generally some nut job who's probably sponsored by Red Bull who specialises in kind of just climbing stuff in storms. So I went Googling people in the Alps, Switzerland. Is there anyone who actually enjoys doing this or thinks it's doable? Is there anything we can do where we can get like a larger team with more roped up people? Are the strategies? Has this been done before? Having a little Google of saying like, well, is that a bit of because climbing a mountain out of its weather window, it's not doable unless it's extreme, which unfortunately it was. So I spent the whole night making contingencies. I was messaging the current guiding company and other ones to say, well, could you get me one for Friday if Thursday doesn't work? If Thursday, Friday, could you get one for Saturday?
Yeah.
Because so many people had helped us, we had so much sponsorship gone into it. I've not really been able to think about anything else in the past 2 months. Yeah. I wasn't really going to just let it slip and say, oh, sorry.
Really trying everything you could,
No, not at all. So I was organising. I mean, I had a holiday booked for the next Tuesday and I would have been willing to move it and just pay for another one if it meant getting a day where this is doable. Yeah. I'd also learnt that legally you don't need a guide to climb it.
Yeah.
And when people were saying that, it might be difficult to get a guide on such short notice, I was saying, well, I don't want to, but I will try if I can't do it.
Yeah.
Eventually, I ran out of ideas. I had a bunch of plans. I had a plan B, C, D, E, F, all going all the way to some crazy letter. And I didn't really have anything else to go forward except for just kind of look. So me and Harry were having a bit of a laugh, knowing our project is probably in the bin at this point. Yeah. Saying, oh, when we wake up tomorrow, it'll be like the Sahara Desert. It'll be like the Caribbean. Yeah. It'll be like waking up on holiday. It'll be so dry. And then what had happened with that is that you were meant to go to sleep and we were waking up at 4 a.m. We didn't get any sleep at all. I think I was so zoned in at the minute. It wasn't nerves. It was just apprehension about what the weather was doing. Yeah. Didn't have any doubts in my ability to do it or what I'd push through. Because I'd done arguably more physically difficult things before. Yeah. So we were just kind of waiting, didn't necessarily get any sleep at all. There's a bit of a tradition in the Horny Hut at the bottom of the Matterhorn where no one leaves before the lead guide of Zermatt. Yeah. And then there's a bit of a ranking system for how far in the queue you are. So behind him will be all the Zermatt guides. Behind him will potentially be any Swiss people. And as you can see, it kind of goes on from locals. Yeah. Me and Dave, being British, were at the back. So I wake up 4 a.m, optimism, I chuck my harness on, my helmet. I can't eat anything because I'm too wired and ready to go at this point. I've not really slept at all, and with sleep deprivation, obviously your appetite can go as well. Managed to just about stomach half a Mars bar. Completely on, helmet on, axe on. I've made the perfect way of bungeeing the wreath to my back, which has been a constant struggle throughout everything. Yeah. And Dave says, looks doable, but there's a storm coming in and we are not climbing through it. The odds of survival are just nothing. So we absolutely have to come back. Yeah, so be quick, but even going as quick as we can, it was still nearly not in the cards, but all I needed was a little opportunity or a little just something to let me start. Yeah. So, I mean, obviously that's how that kind of went into actually doing the summit. Yeah. Now, we'd left the hut.
And Harry was with you at this point with his guide?
Harry was with me with his guide. Now, what the plan was, me and Harry were essentially a contingency for each other. So what would happen is that, because neither of us know if we can do it, because other people's experiences and YouTube videos and articles online are not a good source to see whether or not you can do something and how dangerous something actually is. Because of people wanting a bit of a war story or wanting to make something bigger and scarier than it is to get clicks or something, you have no way of telling how risky something is until you actually try it. Yeah. It has taken more lives than Everest. I think Mount Everest has killed 322 people. The Matterhorn is 500 plus. Yeah. So there was that element of it. People had talked about how difficult. Essentially, we just had no idea what was going to happen. So what we'd do, me and my guide would go first. Yeah. Harry and his guide would be close behind. Yeah. If anything happens to me or I'm injured, or worst case, anything really bad happens, Harry would simply take the wreath and the flag off my back and he would continue on. Yeah. Because at the end of the day, that's what I'd want if the worst was to happen to me. Yeah. And the project was we'd get a flag on the top of the Matterhorn. We didn't say how many people or who'd do it.
Just that was it, getting the flag there, yeah.
What I wanted, I kept Harry behind me. I think me and Harry summiting the mountain at the same time would have been the absolute best option. But what my guide Dave said as well is that if we're 10 minutes faster and we get to the summit, we are not in the safe zone because we have to get off before the thing
storm,
comes.
Yeah.
So we are not waiting for anyone, because if you wait 2 minutes for your friend, then the whole summit might be in the bin.
Yeah.
So what we're going to do is hopefully go at the same speed. Failing that, we'd go up and get 2 separate pictures. Failing that,
one of us will get up there.
Someone gets there, and I don't care who, as long as everyone.
So you started. What time did you leave?
So we leave at 5:15. That was to give everyone time. Obviously, it's decided by the lead guide. So if you want to set off at 3, it's not really. It's probably something you can legally do, but just out of respect for kind of the culture of the area. Yeah, it's not something you do. So we leave at 4:45, and then we just begin the climb then.
And you smashed it. You were really going fast, weren't you?
It was, obviously I had no idea how good I was doing. As I said, similar with the Mont Blanc story, altitude hits harder when you've not slept. If your mental health isn't as good, it will affect your ability to relax. If you're anxious, your heart rate's higher, which means you're using more energy, which means altitude's going to hit you harder again. Now, even on the first day of being in Zermatt, where I wasn't acclimatised at all, the beginning of the Matterhorn was the worst I had felt the entire trip.
Yeah.
Just because you had all these things going against, and the speed we were going was absolutely... It felt pretty insane
I
at the time.
think you overtook all the other people trying to summit that day, didn't you?
I didn't know that at this point.
No.
The only time that sank in, or I was told, was much later in the climb.
Yeah.
So what had happened is that everyone's moving, and because it's such a technical route, a lot of it is kind of in one line, because there's only one way of doing it. So say if someone was slightly slower climbing a section in front of you,
you could slow down everyone.
Yeah, well, you could sit there and have a minute, which I was thinking, thank God. I don't, because I was breathing out of everywhere, and I was extremely tired. Sweat was dripping off me, because even though it was 4 a.m. and high up, it was still pretty warm.
Yeah.
And then Dave, my guide, said to someone like, are you okay stepping out the way and we can go ahead? And they went, yeah, sure, because they were gasping for air and didn't really want to be going that fast either. Didn't like anyone chasing them. And I kind of thought, well, why are you doing that? Because I want to relax. But I never said that, because I knew in the back of my head that we had to get there as quick as we can.
Before that storm,
The summit's a no-go. At the end of the day, I think it takes on average 4 or 5 hours to do this. That's a very short amount of time to endure a lot of pain to get something you've spent so long going for.
And how long did it take you guys to get to the summit?
It took us 3 hours and 22 minutes in the end.
That's pretty fast.
Well, I didn't realise. Obviously, I think Dave as well, he ended up taking us off route, because he knew the plan, and I'd spent a lot of time the night before talking about my contingencies, how much it needed to be done, willing to stay there for an extra week.
Yeah.
And it must have been in his head as well, thinking,
I'm going to get this.
Even if he fails today, he's not leaving or stopping.
Yeah.
So he was taking me off route a bit. Occasionally we'd go up to a couple of people and say, do you mind if we step ahead? And they go, yeah, sure. And then we'd look back like 5 minutes later and they're not there, because they've not kept the same pace.
And at what point did Harry turn back?
Harry, I'm actually unsure. I think it was probably in the first hour.
Yeah.
I'd look back, because we were wearing the shirts with the logos on initially before we had to put on kind of like the extreme weather winter stuff, and I could see his guide's head torch reflecting off his shirt.
Yeah.
So I knew it was him because I recognised the logo. But at the end of the day, one of us had to get there, and obviously there was no chance to wait.
Yeah.
I could see he was safe.
Yeah.
And so apart from that, I didn't know what was going on. Even, whether he was having a breather or he was injured.
Yeah.
It wouldn't matter, and I wouldn't want him to stop for me in the same situation. So we just carried on. It was,
and how was it, summiting it?
It was... Well, it was over in such a flash. I think there was that much adrenaline, because it stopped being a climb. It was this thing that was potentially going to kill you if you were too slow, that I didn't know if I could do in normal weather conditions. Yeah. And we got there, and I've kicked myself out of the habit of, when you're climbing a mountain or being in a race, thinking of where the ending is or where the summit is. Because, there's things called false summits and stuff, where you get excited thinking it's a peak and you get to it, there's another one. So by this point, I've trained myself to not do that. So I was just going and going and going. And Dave said, there's summit slopes here. I was like, yeah, but how big are these slopes? So I wasn't thinking about it. And we were going, and then he said, here we are. And then I looked up and there was just nothing in front of me. And I was like,
you're like, oh, I
was like, oh God. And he asked what the time was, and I mean, it's on my Instagram because I managed to get it on GoPro, but he said, what time are we on? I looked at my watch and it said 3 hours 22. And I was like, well, I didn't realise I could do it that quick. Yeah. I mean, the only time we'd actually noticed we were ahead in any way, shape or form was when we got to the safety hut, which is about 700 metres up. And there was a guy waiting there. I'm not sure what his job was. It might have been a paramedic or something like that. He also said that's where people go if everything goes bad.
Yeah.
And Dave said, so how many people have gone past? He said, none, you're the first. And I completely stopped drinking out of the Camelback and turned around going, we're the first.
Yeah.
And if you think about where we started in the queue as well, we were at the back.
Yeah.
Half these people doing it live in Switzerland and are mountaineers, and they do this stuff all the time. And everyone's going against the clock here. It's not like the other half of people are just going for a leisurely stroll to enjoy the view. Everyone's thinking, I've put $3,000 in the pot here minimum to try and do this, and if I don't, I'm going home empty-handed.
So it was a double massive achievement to be the first climber of the day up there.
It was a double massive one. No time to enjoy it because I said
get down because of the storm.
It's not like doing the London Marathon where you could just run through the finish line and say, "Yeah, you've done it," and fall into your family's arms and everything. Yeah, at the top of the mountain, you're at the most dangerous point.
Yeah, so you got to get back down.
You do. So Dave's like, right, let's take pictures and go. And I didn't miss a beat. I was just like, yeah.
And down climbing's harder, right, than going up, or more dangerous.
Both.
Yeah.
I'd say definitely both. Obviously, so we're at the summit. We get our pictures took, and then I'll probably look out literally for about 5 seconds and we have to go. That's it. So I don't have much memory of what it looked like, to be honest with you. When we start down climbing, I think your visibility is potentially not as good, because if you imagine if you're looking up, you can see everything because there's nothing in the way. If you're looking down, your own body's kind of obstructing your view a little bit. And if you imagine if you're walking upstairs and you fall on the steps in front of you. Yeah. If you're walking downstairs and you fall forward, you've got quite a bit of a drop. So it's a similar type of thing. Yeah. Obviously, we're chasing rain at this point, or avoiding it. Sorry.
Yeah.
So.
And could you see the storm coming in?
Well, actually, as we were on the top, I was holding the flag, and it was a massive crack of lightning went off as we were on the top, and I was like, "Well, if this isn't cinematic enough, it's getting even worse." Just to talk about alpine thunderstorms, though, there was a massive one that was hitting the hut and the mountain the night before. Yeah. So it wasn't like, it's not a storm that might come. It was a storm that was currently on us and was either going to give us a break or it was going to continue on. Yeah. So I was lying in my bed in the hut at like 11 at night or something, and a flash of lightning went off, and with my eyes closed, I could see my bed frame through my eyelids. Yeah. It was that bright. And I was like, whoa. So luckily, the storm backed off, and we went down the mountain, and I went a little bit slower on the way down. We were still racing against the storm, but going up is about hitting the summit, and then going down is about getting home to your family
safely. Yeah.
So the goal then wasn't to rush it was to be as careful as you possibly can. And 10 minutes after we reached the bottom, thunder and lightning and rain and sideways wind and everything. So so it was a good job.
Made it just in time.
Literally, if we were 10 minutes slower. Now I think there was probably about 40 people trying to climb the mountain that day.
Yeah.
80% didn't make it at all because they were probably either burnt themselves out, the difficulty was too hard. A lot of people don't really realise what they've got into until they've done it, or maybe when the sun finally arises they look down and go, I'm not doing this. Only 20% of people actually made it, and I think everyone else will have got caught in the storm. Because I've not seen anything in the news, I'm assuming everyone made it down safely, or they'll have spent a night in the hut to kind of get around it. But I think me and Dave were the only ones who managed to get up and down within the weather window, so extra grateful for that.
Grateful, yeah. To what degree do you think it's like mental toughness that you need over physical fitness? Because obviously you do need to be trained and in the right condition, but like kind of mindset's going to make it or break it, isn't it? So how do you make sure your mind's in the right place to do these things?
Well, it depends, I suppose, what you like, because all the physical fitness really is not about whether you can do it or not. It's just about when you tell your body to do something, will it do it? Yeah. And if you've got tired legs or your lungs are burning out or your grip's going, then it's just not gonna do it. But the mental toughness is, are you gonna tell yourself to keep going? Yeah. Now, like, to say how much of a part of it is, or like what do you do to prepare for it, I'm not really sure. I think it definitely helps. If you're on a run or if you're on a day where you can't be bothered, it's good to look at something into a bit of perspective. So there are definitely quite a lot of the training days where I just could not be bothered, or would be waking up at 5:30 for a CrossFit session. And to just have a little second to yourself to think, you doing this now is going to add to your fitness a small percentage. And that might be the difference between doing it and not doing it. Or if I was on a run and I'd be feeling terrible, I'd have a bit of a stitch, or if, something's going on, I feel a bit ill that day. I think, altitude's going to do 5 times worse than this to your body. So just try and give yourself a bit of perspective in the moment. And even if it's something you're not going to experience at all, so if it was quite late at night and I was thinking, well, it's 11 at night and I've not managed to get anything in because I've been doing revision or email, should I still train? And I was thinking, well, there are people who work in the emergency services that are going to be chasing after someone at 2 a.m.
Yeah.
So you can go for a run at 11.
Yeah.
So that's generally how I get around stuff. I put stuff into perspective and I get in the habit of that. So when I'm in something like the, Matterhorn situation, as I said, I felt terrible. My heartbeat was in the back of my head. I couldn't stomach anything. But because I'm in that habit of just putting something into perspective, saying, listen, you've got 3.5 hours.
Yeah.
Or at the time I thought 4 or 5. You only need to do this once. And then you've done it forever.
Yeah.
And think of how many times a lot of people don't want to go to work and they just get through 8 hours of stuff they don't want to do. Some people do that 5 days a week.
Yeah.
So I'd say to myself, well, I only need to do this for 4 hours.
And then it'll be over.
And it's done, yeah. It depends if you actually want to do it as well. I mean, if you try to get me to sit down and do some kind of paperwork or something, I will put up... There's probably not a force in the world that would have stopped me from trying to do the Matterhorn regardless.
Yeah.
And there's probably not a force in the world that will make me sit still.
For 4 hours and do paperwork. Yeah.
Exactly. So it obviously depends what you're into, what you want to do and what your goals are.
What drives you, doesn't it?
I knew what mine were from day one and then they never faded off.
Yeah. And obviously that charity fundraising was a massive part of that motivation for you, that mental motivation. So we've already said about who you chose to fundraise for. Why did you choose those 2 charities?
So Macmillan, now I've got personal battles that have gone on in my own family to do with cancer. Now my grandmother passed away not just because of that. There was quite a few health issues, but it definitely didn't help. There were certain I think she had a couple kind of one at one go. Now my own granddad has been diagnosed recently, or he's been told he's potentially got something. So it's an ongoing thing. And then as my grandmother was slowly kind of deteriorating and passing away, I was self-employed at the time, and I did a lot of work in actually taking care of her and helping out my granddad do it. So I could see the amount of hard work that goes into it and how much stress it can put on a family, and people are dropping hobbies because maybe they have to take care of someone. Not that it's anything bad, it's a natural part of life, and obviously everyone wants to chip in, so no one even feels bad about doing it. Now, Macmillan Cancer Support was something that I had a lot of friends who already do charity work for them. My gran had deteriorated too quickly for an intervention to even happen, to be honest. So personal experience-wise, I didn't know too much about them. I just knew many people vouch for them. It's, as I've started, I've realised how good they are. So some people... I mean, there was one guy who I worked with come out to me and he said that he had cancer when he was 5 and he went through chemotherapy which lasted 2 or 3 years and it didn't stop till he was like 8 or 9.
Yeah.
I didn't even know what happened to him, but he said Macmillan were amazing for him and they give his family like a PSP at Christmas so he could have something to play on while he was waiting in bed and stuff. I mean, that was incredible. And then someone else has come out and said that I think the mother's got cancer and it was affecting her mental health quite a bit. So it wasn't necessarily support with that, but it was how it was affecting her life. And the NHS, as amazing as they are, they need to take care of everyone and they can struggle with resources. So I think they were saying, you're on the mental health waiting list, it's 18 months before you can get counselling. And Macmillan intervened and then paid for her to get private sessions straight away.
Yeah.
So there's like 10 other different things I've heard, countless many more. Just speaking to them and seeing how proactive they are.
Yeah.
Is made me feel that they are really great because not all charities are equal, I don't feel. There are some which may work like insurance companies and they'll say, oh, sorry, we're not going to give out because you don't fit this exact criteria or something. Now, Macmillan and the Royal Navy Royal Marines charity, after speaking to them, they will do whatever they can to actually help someone.
Yeah.
And obviously I was happy doing everything I could. RNRMC, they were incredibly supportive. They even provided the flags and the T-shirts, did a lot of fundraising. They actually set up a stand with us and they were happy with like half the money going to Macmillan. A lot of people who actually work there had things going on with cancer and experiences with Macmillan themselves. So either charity was supportive of the other one too.
Yeah.
So it all just worked really well.
And how much have you raised so far for them?
So far is the keyword because it's still open.
Still going, I'll put the link in the show notes in case anyone wants to donate.
Oh, amazing. Thanks very much. So far we're about £5,600.
Nice.
Only initially wanted to raise 5,000, but we'd actually hit that by the time we summited. And what I want to do now, I've got to get back to normal life and start revising for exams and resits that I've failed because I've started because I put so much into this. But I want to use a little bit of time just to try to get a little bit more because I know they're going to good places. So as I said, 5,600 so far. If we can hit 6, maybe 7,
That'd be
that'd be
awesome.
absolutely incredible.
Yeah.
We're going to be in a magazine in October, and that's going to have like a QR code on it, so we're going to keep the charity open till maybe just
then,
after
yeah.
then. So if anyone feels like dropping, I think the minimum you can do is like a £5 or something like that. If you feel like contributing to it, or you've found it
Skip
interesting.
a pint in the pub and donate.
Skip a pint in the pub, or just get a pint in a cheaper pub and then donate £5. So yeah.
What was I thinking? I was just thinking about the cost of pints. Got distracted.
It's very variable.
It's very variable. So yes. So what next though? I don't want to go without asking you. Like, you must have something up your sleeve for next time.
It's opened up a lot of doors, and a lot of the doors I can't say just yet, because there are maybe some very big adventurous companies who'd rather you sign a contract before you start talking about whatever. But I've got very, very big offers. There are some sponsorships. There are some like custom companies do whatever, and it seems like this has been done so quick that a lot of the bigger companies either didn't realise what was going to happen, how interesting it would be, or how well we'd do.
Yeah.
After the fact, now they're going, well, this was actually really, really good.
Yeah.
Obviously, I was on like BBC Radio Devon a couple of days ago, and a lot of people didn't think it would get to that extent. It's only going to get bigger. A lot of people want to invest more, which means that my financial resources, potentially my support from work, and the general teams of people I can be in contact with are going to get bigger.
Yeah.
Got people like a guy who owns a YouTube channel with like hundreds of thousands of followers. He was saying he wants to do all my media for me.
Yeah.
So instead of me trying to work out terrible Instagram stories and stuff like that, he'd potentially do vlogs and everything.
Yeah.
So it's there to do everything. Now, I've got annual leave around the time that the weather window for Everest is doable.
Yeah.
I've heard of people using altitude acclimatization tents in their own home to get up to a certain level.
So they can do it at home and then get out there.
They can do a good majority of it at home, and then you're going to have to make it up with a bit of mental toughness, because it'll never be as good as being there, but it means it's in the cards. I've always wanted to be a bit more comfortable in the water, and I know a couple of people who've swam the channel.
Yeah.
It's not as scary of a challenge as you may think, but it's a hard one. So
what about swimming around the UK?
I don't know how long that is. It sounds scary. I think the channel's like 19 miles. So I was about to say only 19 miles then.
But that's still quite a lot of swimming,
It's a lot of swimming, yeah. It's something...
Actually, the people that I know that have done it in relay, which is different from doing it on your own. So actually, it's quite a big thing to do on your own.
Yeah, I think I'd maybe want like a little boat next to me.
Safety boat, but like,
Yeah, something. So, you know, there's bigger mountains. I've got a friend, I think she's second in the world in triathlete competitions. I'm not too familiar with that type of sport, so I'm unsure, but she's done stuff in Abu Dhabi, and she wants to run up Kilimanjaro with me. Yeah. Because the route to Kilimanjaro is more of walking. Yeah. And it's 24 miles long. So if you've got a marathon and you're uphill, potentially the use of a tent again, I can turn a week task into a 12-hour one again. Yeah. It's whatever it is. I mean, I'm working with a guy called Lloyd Tonkin. I'm going to be doing a lot of things with him to do with basically just injury prevention and gaining mass back and stuff like that. Yeah. And it just means it's going to set me up better for next year. Yeah.
So if someone wants to keep an eye on what you're doing, they can find you on Instagram.
Oh, definitely, yeah. So my name's Lars Atkins, or my Instagram's the Larsypan.
We'll put that in the show notes as well.
Yeah, go for it. Obviously, you know, if anyone's got ideas they want to send me, if they've heard this and think, oh, well, I think he'd be quite good at doing that, I mean, I'm open to absolutely anything. Yeah. The only thing what limits me is money, time off work, and knowledge. Yeah. I can swindle time off work, I can get sponsors, and if people want to tell me cool ideas, then I'm all ears.
You can learn. Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for your time today.
Thank you very much.
Before you go, I've been asking everyone these 3 questions, and my first one is, how do you relax?
Not a lot of that's happened the past 2 months, I won't lie. Personally for me, I think between visiting family, got like a long distance partner, I've got work commitments, everything. My relaxation probably comes in the odd couple of minutes or 5 minutes again as I'm going through a day. Yeah. Might be a case of literally just lying in my bed, setting a little alarm, or just knowing, right, I'm going to continue the rest of my huge workload in 5 minutes. Yeah. Or if it's stood on the top of the Matterhorn looking at the view for 5 seconds. Yeah. If it's literally waiting for someone to tie a rope and I can spend 2 seconds looking at the hills around me. Generally, that's how I do it. Yeah, fair enough. That works to be just enough for me, and I can carry on.
And what are you reading or listening to right now?
What am I reading or listening to right now? Could
just be some favourite tunes. People always like to know new bands.
favourite tunes. I mean, what am I listening to? I think for the Mountain Project, there's a guy, the guy who did the 14 Peaks documentary, Nims Purger. He's a big role model of mine, not because of what he's done in mountaineering, but the way his head works and the way he kind of problem solves.
Yeah.
His audiobook, Beyond Possible, I've been listening to that recently, trying to kind of top up my own optimism when going towards things. I really like that one.
Okay, awesome. And finally, why is being outdoors important to you?
Why is being outdoors important to me? I'll say I don't know. And the reason I say that is because I just don't have an understanding of why it happens. But there's something about being in nature that can kind of bring all your problems into a more rational position. I feel like you can breathe deeper, you can relax. I don't mind nightclubs and parties and stuff. I do go to them, but I generally feel like if I spend a day out wild swimming with friends, or if I go out in the hills or something like that, there's a rejuvenating thing. And I think probably 95% of the stresses that the world feels today will come from something modern.
Yeah.
It'll come from a phone, it'll come from a meeting, it'll come from work or anything else bothering, probably some hierarchy in your job. That's what bothers most people today. And whenever you go out for a wild swim, or you swim in the sea, or you go up the hill or something, you get away from it.
Yeah.
That's why I think there's good value in it, and it's good living near nature, and if you don't, just making the effort to do the trip every now and again.
Yeah, excellent. Awesome. Well, thanks so much for your time today. We've really enjoyed talking to you.
Thank you for having me.
No, you're very welcome. A big thank you to Lars for coming to join us and talk about his challenge climbing the Matterhorn and the amazing charities he's been fundraising for. We put the link to his GoFundMe in the show notes, so if you do fancy donating a couple of pounds to a really worthy cause, please go ahead and do that. We hope you enjoyed listening to that episode. That was the last episode of Series 3 of the Outdoors Group podcast. We'll be back in about a month's time, and we've already got some really exciting episodes lined up, so do make sure you come back to listen to the Season 4. If you've enjoyed the last season, we would love it if you would rate the podcast, like it, share it with your friends, just so that more people can find us. Until next time, thanks for listening.